are back, everybody. This is the morning show. I'm Marcia Macomber, your host on Monday mornings. It's 8:42 on this April 12th. And I'm here with my next guest, who I'm very excited to talk with. Dr. Teresa Van Roy is the author of Wildflower, A Tale of Transcendence. She currently lives in Benicia with her husband and 3 daughters. She's a board-certified podiatrist, and she has a passion for world travel, writing, photography, martial arts, woodworking, unusual. Wildflower is her first book, and it's really quite the memoir of a personal history, almost not to be believed. I was rather astounded, Teresa, when I saw that, you thought you were going on a vacation to California, and then you get left here with your mother, who's not altogether of soundest of mind, and it wasn't a great experience. You can hit your unmute button now.
Okay.
Good morning, Teresa. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, congratulations on the book's release. This is really exciting. And you spent your childhood, or at least your childhood from 7 on, right?
Yes.
You got stuck in the Tenderloin with your mother and 2 of your siblings?
3.
3 of your siblings. Okay. What? Give us the backstory to this whole thing, because it's really kind of fascinating.
Okay, so my mother showed up at our house in a Ford pickup truck with a camper on the back and says, we're going to go on a family vacation. She has 9 kids, so she loaded us all in. And before we even made it to the West Coast, we ran out of food stamps. We ran out of food, so we were digging in garbage cans and begging at restaurants. In San Francisco, we were homeless and, basically getting kicked out of park after park in the camper until a cop told us about a homeless shelter for families called Raphael House. So we stayed there, my mom and all 9 of us, and my mom sent half of my siblings back home to Florida. None of us knew we'd be staying in San Francisco. So once we left the homeless shelter, she did find a small studio apartment right in the center of the Tenderloin. And it was there that basically I became the head of the household. My older sister was 5 years older than me. I was 7. And then she brought my twin brothers, who were 2 at the time. So it was now my job to do the grocery shopping, do the cooking, take care of my little brothers. And my mother was very mentally unstable and extremely abusive to me.
Wow. But you overcame that. Let's talk a little bit about why you decided that you wanted to write about it. It's obviously writing is a passion of yours, because the book is beautifully crafted. What were kind of your motivating factors to go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to write the whole thing?
Well, it's always been a secret of mine. So no one knew this about my past, because I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be normal. And I was at this New Living Expo, which I love. And I won this free class in San Francisco. And it was a class called Think and Be Wealthy, kind of like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill type. But it was more like people were sharing stories and tears. And it just happened that class, the building was right above one of the apartments I lived in San Francisco. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so all these memories flashed back. And I don't share my story that often. So the instructor of the class, he pulled me aside during one of the breaks, and I told him a little bit about it. And so during the course of the weekend and the second class to follow, he learned more and more. And he was the one who said, Teresa, you really should write this. You should write a book, because you can inspire so many people. I'm like, oh, no way. But he goes, yeah, you can really inspire people who may be in the same situation as you. So it took some talking into, but finally I thought, okay, well, maybe I will. And then I started it. And then
that's good. Encouragement from other people is a major source of kind of, nudging us in the direction we're supposed to go. So willingly nudge, as a guide. I'm just astonished to think about what you had to deal with. San Francisco was a whole new location, a new town. It was 3,000 miles away from your dad and the rest of your family since they got set back. I have to say the opening of the book is very dramatic because you're running after the bus as half of your siblings are sent back to Florida, and you can't catch up with the bus. So, a highly dramatic beginning there. What was going through your mind at the time in terms of dealing with your mother, and were you realizing in that moment that you were going to have to take care of your younger siblings and all that, or did those kind of revelations come a bit over time to you?
Well, my mother did have a way to separate us, the 9 kids, and she had her favorites, and then she had the ones that she didn't like so much. And I definitely was on the bottom of that, of the not liking. When she was pregnant with me, she had a nervous breakdown and locked herself during her pregnancy and in her room and with the curtains closed and the lights off. So I had a bad start with my mother, and my older sister was her favorite of the whole bunch. And then the twins were just too young to do anything. And at that point, we were already as a family, and on that trip, doing the cooking and doing the cleaning and dealing with my mom's fits of rage and everything. So I didn't know that it would all fall on me. And at that moment I didn't, but it was no surprise really. And once we left Raphael House, at the time Raphael House was run by nuns. It's not anymore. It was like right when we left there and moved to the Tenderloin, it just hit me all at once. Like, now go to the grocery store, even though I didn't know where it was.
Wow. And then if you were the one who was in charge of the groceries, that also meant that you needed to be in charge of the money.
So
banking. What was that like, getting used to, what do things cost? What is the right thing to pay for at 7 years old?
Yeah. Yeah. It was very stressful. So my mom would give me a list and she'd always say, buy the cheapest item on the list. And many times going to the checkout stand with my book of food stamps and not having enough money and having the checker have to call the manager to take items off. So after that happening a few times, I just counted and recounted how much everything would cost before I'd go to the check stand. It was embarrassing enough, even though we were in the Tenderloin, that I was using food stamps. And the last thing I wanted was now for all the attention to be on me by not having enough money.
Wow. Did you, as you settled, not that there's any settling to be done really under those circumstances, but as you came to know the Tenderloin, were you able to build some friendships and stable relationships to kind of help ease your burden?
No, not in the Tenderloin. There were a lot of creepy people in the Tenderloin. I was followed a lot and just a lot of creepy things. And then at school, because we went to Catholic school, the school wasn't that close to the Tenderloin. I had to take the bus and walk. So I did have a couple of friends at school, but nobody near my apartment.
Oh, wow. Wow. What a challenge. And then was this particular school kind of one where you felt like it was safe to be in school and it was kind of a haven for you? Or was school also tricky to deal with for you?
3rd grade was tricky. It was kind of weird because I went to a Japanese school in Japantown. And so I was the minority. And so, yeah, school was a little tricky until I got to 4th grade and switched schools. And then school did become a haven for me. And I think going to these schools is kind of what pushed me to become who I am today. I think that was one of the key things in my life is I don't know how it would have been if I went to a school in the Tenderloin and just hung out with people that had the same families or situations as I did, versus going to a very affluent school where I can just see how the other half lived, which encouraged me to really try my best to move forward.
So that gave you a sense of possibility, that there were possibilities and hopes to move into a different type of life.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good start there. You really seem to have developed a sense of dreaming of what a better life could be. Did you get encouragement from teachers or counselors or anything that kind of gave you an accelerated push in this direction?
Unfortunately, no. And I think that's one of the key messages I want to have for my book is how important teachers can be in a child's life. And, I kind of wish and I hope any teacher that does read my book will realize, like, hey, I can make a difference in this kid's life. If, as an adult, if they say, like, hey, who was your role model as a kid? It could be that teacher. But no, I didn't have that. I did have my school. I went to a French Catholic school then, Notre Dame de Victoire. And they had a French choir. And I was in the French choir. And we would go to these really nice parties and elaborate places around town. And I fit in like everyone else because we were in these cute little uniforms. So nobody knew I was different. And I got praised like the rest of the kids did. And it was just another thing, like, in that kind of environment, seeing, again, what the better life, like, this is like, it just seems so more normal to me and that's what I wanted to strive for.
Mm-hmm. Some form of normalcy, which you've now achieved. What else would you like to tell our listeners in terms of what some key lessons you learned were that, would help somebody else who might be in these shoes? When you talked about coming from basically living destitute in the Tenderloin and trying to find a way out, essentially, particularly when you're that young, I was reminded of one of Joe Vitale's comments. I don't know if you know Joe Vitale, an inspirational speaker, but he talked about the attitude of gratitude, and he was homeless at the time, and he was trying to find, what do I have to be grateful for? How can I shift to that? And he says, well, I got a pencil to write with, so I can be grateful that I have the pencil to write with, and that was a starting point for him. What were some of you mentioned being in the choir, and certainly I think you mentioned having, you looked the same because you had the Catholic school uniform, so that you looked like everybody else. What were some of the other things that people might be able to use who are listening, who are struggling with dreaming of another life and wondering if they can ever get there?
Well, I think that's the key point, is just keep dreaming. Dreams can become reality as long as you never lose faith in them. And my mantra always was, I'm never going to be like my mother, ever. And I carried that always. And my mom would tell stories about her mother abusing her. And me and my siblings would be like, seriously, like, look what she's doing. And by having that realization, like, she's talking about her mother, yet she's doing the same. I'll never do that. And I think it's having that in your head, like, no, I'm never going to repeat this. I'm not going to be like her. And I hated her so much at the time that I wanted to be completely opposite, everything opposite of her. And so I think that was a motivating factor for me. And, just keeping that dream alive. And yeah, it was hard for me. It was hard in school, but I wanted to do it. So I had to study a lot harder than probably everyone else because I didn't have the environment as a kid to study and make great grades and everything. So now it's up to me to do it. And if it means like having to repeat a class, and you just have to work harder and never give up, because it's not going to really come easy, but I'm going to say I'm living proof you can do it.
Do you feel like it was a long-term gradual process, or do you remember a certain point at which you went, the load is easing up for me? Was it, going away to school, away from your mother and all that? What do you think some of those points were that were key for you?
Yes, leaving my mother. And and leaving her completely, of not letting her be in my head. I'm away from there. That's the past. And I blocked it off. And then I just tried my best to fit in, to be normal, to be like everyone else without this tainted, with everyone who knew my mother from the past and who knew our living situations and everything, and where I didn't really fit in. It's basically, I just blocked it off and moved forward. And now I'm on my own and I can do it.
You've come around full circle. Now you've got this beautiful book that's out. We've been talking with Dr. Teresa Van Roy. She's the author of her first book, Wildflower, A Tale of Transcendence, and it really is transcending and uplifting. We've got to go in just a moment. What last words do you want to leave with our listeners, Teresa?
I would just, I guess, follow your dreams, never give up on what you believe in. And another thing is just see the world through your hearts and be kind and loving to everyone. And those little small acts of kindness that you can do every day really make a big difference in people's lives.
Love it. Great advice. Wonderful advice. Dr. Teresa Van Roy, thank you for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Good luck with the book. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.